So, Bond number 6. I think one's ability to enjoy this film depends heavily on what one would think about its leading star, because Sean Connery isn't it. After You Only Live Twice, Connery had a strained relationship with the film's producers, and he was tired of all the baggage that came with shooting and promoting these films. The producers started looking for another actor to don the suave British persona, reportedly even approaching Roger Moore and Timothy Dalton, both who would eventually take on The Secret Agent down the road. Eventually, they picked Australian model George Lazenby because, well, I don't really know. Many fans consider him the absolute worst Bond in the series, and even those who enjoyed this one generally dismiss his performance as mediocre at best. It's hard to compare him to all the others because he only portrayed the character for one film, deciding during its production that he would not go on to do more. The film was directed by Peter Hunt, who was an editor on all the prior films in the series, and who now wanted to take over directing responsibilities. Hunt was going for a more realistic-looking film, and one that stayed close to Ian Fleming's novel. Because of that, even though we get some exotic locations and a huge scope, there are very few gadgets in this film, which is another gripe amongst the fans. The prologue opens with the troubled Bond girl attempting to drown herself when 007 comes to the rescue. It's obvious from his first line that this simply isn't Bond.
Good morning. My name's Bond. James Bond.
At least, not the Bond we've come to know. Lazenby comes off as more sincere right off the bat. So Bond gets into a fight with some random thugs, and I always thought the editing here was kind of distracting. I have no clue what's going on. This was generally Peter Hunt's style, to edit in this fast-paced manner to keep the story moving, but sometimes it could be a little jarring. So Bond wins the fight. No, really? I thought he was going to die finally. And the girl runs off. Then Lazenby says what is by far the most memorable line of the movie, and it breaks the fourth wall a bit.
This never happened to the other fella.
The movie flat out acknowledges that there was a different actor prior to his taking on the role. This is a line that might be appropriate for a trailer or a publicity video, but putting it in whose name is Tracy DiVincenzo. Later, when Bond goes to meet her, he gets attacked by another random thug and, in typical Bond fashion, engages in the high life just seconds after nearly being killed. He goes back to his apartment where Tracy points his own gun at him. She insists that she pay him back for saving her life, so what else do? It's not Connery, but it's still Bond. Of course, they have sex. Well, I can't think of anything better to do. In the morning, he finds his bed is empty, which is kind of strange because usually we don't bother to find out what happens the night after, and then 007 gets kidnapped by the thugs from earlier. He gets taken to Draco, a big-time crime boss, as well as Tracy's father. Now, I've seen some twisted movie villains, but when you think about what he says to Bond, they don't really come any more sick than this.
What she needs is a man to dominate her, to make love to her enough to make her love him.
Keep in mind, this is coming from her father. Draco wants Bond to marry his daughter and even offers to pay him £1 million, but Bond declines, saying that it's not in his nature nor his profession to wed. They make a deal that Bond will go through with the wedding if Draco tells him the whereabouts of Ernst Blofeld. So, once again, Spectre becomes the film's main antagonist.
You understand?
Let's say I'll sleep on the idea.
Jesus, come on, it's your daughter, man. Bond goes to report to MI6, where M, played again by Bernard Lee, takes 007 off the heels of Blofeld. Insulted, Bond threatens to resign. He goes into his office to pack his things, and we get another little reminder of the earlier films, where he digs out artifacts from his prior adventures. The borrowed music is a nice little nostalgic touch. M grants him 2 weeks' leave instead. Getting a little friendly with Miss Moneypenny, aren't we?
What would I do without you, Miss Moneypenny? Thank you.
During an outing at a bullfight, Tracy proves she's as good of a card player as the men and forces her father to reveal the whereabouts of Blofeld. Assuming Bond has no further interest in her, she storms off, with James following her. Then we get something that's not so typical in a Bond film, a love montage.
All the precious things love has in store, we have all.
A love montage done to Louis Armstrong. Interesting choice? So Bond visits the law office of Gebruder Gumbold, where he orchestrates the arrival of a decoder to unlock a safe. He gets the documents he needs, sends back the decoder, and leaves the main offices as he examines a Playboy centerfold. Really? He's stooping to that level? So a few confusing plot threads later, Bond disguises himself as a college genealogist and goes to meet Blofeld at a clinical research facility in the Swiss Alps. And who else does Bond meet there? Women, of course. A whole room of crazy, ditzy women. These are Blofeld's angels of death, women who have been brainwashed into doing Blofeld's bidding across the world. So Bond meets Blofeld as Sir Hilary Bray, but there are a few noticeable gaps in the continuity here. First, where's Blofeld's scar? And two, why doesn't Blofeld recognize Bond after they've already had a prior encounter? Is it because of his ever-so-dashing Swiss attire? One could assume that this is actually a prequel to You Only Live Twice. After all, the novel On Her Majesty's Secret Service came out 1 year before that. But that doesn't make much sense either, because Blofeld introduces himself to Bond in You Only Live Twice. It's understood that the films and the novels have differing timelines, so we can assume that the films take place in consecutive order. And if this happened in one of the newer Bond films, it would be understandable. But I still think this was a little early in the series to just start disregarding earlier plot threads. Not that it's important, but still. So after escaping his booby-trapped room, Bond goes to seduce one of the Angels of Death, Ruby Bartlett.
It's true!
Okay, so is he hung like a horse or an infant? Either way, her laughing probably isn't a good confidence booster. We finally get to see Blofeld's master plan at work, where he uses audio technology to hypnotize the girls. We hear him speaking to Ruby, and his speech is, well, it's really hard to take seriously.
Do you remember when you first came here? How you hated chickens? How you were sick when you even saw one? But all that is over now, for I have shown you how foolish it was, and your cure is nearly done. I have taught you to love chickens.
So then Bond goes to seduce another woman named... Well, who really cares at this point? I mean, honestly, he's supposed to be falling for this Tracy girl, but then he goes off and has sex with these other women, so once again, he just throws morality out the window. If you want to know her name, just look it up on Wikipedia like I do. After getting hit in the head, Bond has a confrontation with Blofeld, who has finally discovered 007's real identity. He then reveals his plot to release a worldwide virus that will hinder the populace's ability to procreate unless his demands are met. Yay, another take over the world scheme. Because, you know, it worked so well before.
I have been training my own special angels of death.
Those girls.
Those girls. And many others like them.
But exactly how?
That will remain my secret.
Well, he's finally learning. It only took him 4 films. Blofeld detains Bond and even shows him what happened to his accomplice. James escapes using the monorail system and skis down the Swiss Alps in a pretty thrilling action sequence. On the ground, Blofeld's henchmen continue to search for him when he runs into Tracy. They escape in her car where a chase sequence ensues, and a good one at that. They escape to a barn where, what wonders never cease, James proposes to her. Then he makes it his New Year's resolution to wait until their wedding night before he sleeps with her. Again. Okay, now I'm getting a little soft spot for him. The next morning, Bond and Tracy continue their ski escape, once again pursued by Blofeld's forces. That's probably the best thing I've ever seen in a Bond film so far. There's an avalanche that wipes out the mountainside. Bond escapes, of course, while Blofeld kidnaps Tracy. M once again takes 007 off the case. 007 partners with Draco to launch an airstrike against Blofeld's facility. Tracy actually fights back. Wow, a Bond girl who's more than just legs and tits? That's new. So Bond blows up the audio mechanism that was controlling the girls, then chases Blofeld in a bobsled. Blofeld is stopped once again, and we get to Bond's wedding. So they're really doing this, huh? Okay, fine. He's married. He'd better get himself checked out now. Hey everyone, it's Q.
I must confess that I've sometimes thought you a little,
Irresponsible?
Exactly, that's exactly the word. Thank you.
And he's not giving out any gadgets. Aww. I have to say, even though it's only the 6th installment, there's a definite feeling of closure here. That wasn't nice. That wasn't nice at all. But hey, it sets up the next film. So of the first 6 films, this one really stands out as strange. Not just because of George Lazenby either. Honestly, he's not that bad. In fact, I could see him kind of growing into the role. But look at who he gets sandwiched between. Sean Connery and Roger Moore, both of whom played the character the longest. Even Connery wasn't perfect for his first outing. It wasn't really until Goldfinger that he actually became Bond. So to compare Lazenby to Connery or even any of the other Bonds is really premature. But just look at the rest of the film. It's got Bond actually falling in love, not to mention a wedding. There are no gadgets, and all the action scenes are practical by comparison. At the same time, it continues pretty much where the last one left off, and Bond is pretty much doing what he does best, chasing the bad guy and poking a bunch of hot women.
It's true!
Some fans actually consider this the black sheep of the franchise solely because of Lazenby's performance, while others consider it a necessary staple of the series. All I have to say is Lazenby doesn't ruin the movie for me, although it takes the majority of the film to accept him as the suave secret agent, especially since Connery played him up to this point. If you can get past that, then what you have is a unique entry in the series that makes an even exchange. It replaces complexity and gadgetry with more thought, a faster pace, and passion. It's a James Bond film, and that's my verdict.
Do you always arm yourself for a rendezvous?
Occasionally, I seem to be excellent, Prawn.